Hello and welcome to another European Agenda program. We are having today former European Parliamentarian and European Parliament Director of the Friends of the Kurds, Jürgen Klute. And on our Skype connection, we have former Minister of Justice and Interior of Iceland, former member of the Icelandic Parliament, and member of the International Peace Delegation to Imrali Ögmundur Jónasson, and human rights lawyer and member of the Steering Committee of Peace in Kurdistan and Women's Alliance, Melanie Gingell, is with us on our Skype as well. Thanks for joining us, all of you, first of all.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So I would like to start with dear Melanie, first of all. Melanie, what are your conclusions about the treatment of Ocalan after 23 years of incarceration? We would like to start with the Ocalan's isolation, and this is our main topic today. How would you going to evaluate the incarceration?
Well, as you say, the incarceration of Abdullah Öcalan has been going on for 23 years now. And his conditions are, we decided, the most extreme conditions of isolation of any political prisoner in Europe. His conditions are worse, in fact, than those endured by Nelson Mandela on Robben Island. As you know, Öcalan is held in an island prison on the island of Imrali. For 12 years, he was the only prisoner on the island. He's guarded by 1,000 troops. There's constant air, sea, land surveillance of his conditions. He is totally cut off from the world. And since March 2015, there's been no contact with him whatsoever. According to international law and domestic law, he should have basic rights of contact with family, with lawyers, but that is not happening. And yes, so his treatment is extreme. By any consideration, his treatment is appalling. It breaches all sorts of international and domestic obligations. So Turkish law is being breached and international law is being breached.
We will carry on with Ögmundur. Dear Ögmundur, Peace in Kurdistan campaign has published a report. You are one of the leading names on preparation of this report, which states Mr. Abdullah Öcalan's held in the most extreme conditions of isolation of any political prisoner in Europe. How has that situation came out? What is your evaluation about that?
Well, that's a very good question. How has this come about? It's a good question because, as Melanie has just explained to us, his imprisonment without a fair trial and then total isolation with access to his lawyers contravenes the European Convention of Human Rights and the United Nations basic principles on the rights of lawyers. There have been verdicts by the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg to this effect, and the Committee on the Prevention of Torture of the Council of Europe has also condemned the isolation conditions at Imrali and confirmed its illegality. But to understand why this has come about, we must go back to 1999, because as Melanie has just recalled, he has been in prison, incarcerated on Imrali Island since that time for 23 years, for almost a quarter of a century. Then he was abducted in a clandestine operation organized jointly by the secret services of the United States, of Israel, and Turkey, with the compliance of NATO. Now, this was a clandestine operation, as I say, secret. And so everything has been about Imrali Island. It's been secret. But then it's here that the secrecy ends, because the Turkish authorities, they want everybody, and especially the Kurds, to be aware of the treatment of Ocalan. They thereby are saying, what happens to Ocalan can also happen to you. So the illegal isolation at Imrali prison is a warning. It is a threat to the Kurdish community in general. Be quiet, be subservient. But Erdogan will never succeed in making the Kurds quiet and subservient. That much I know. So the key to understanding why this has come about is to understand who have been the partners of Turkey in the oppression of the Kurds. It is they who allow Erdogan to do this. That is why the situation, this intolerable situation, has been maintained.
You make a really good point, dear Ögmundur. Thank you so much. We will get back to you very shortly. I would like to carry on with Jürgen. Jürgen, thanks for coming. Thanks for accepting this invitation, first of all. So as an ex-parliamentarian, I would like to ask you that why is the European Union, which constantly sells itself very well on human rights, democracy, and compliance with the international agreements, is still silent about Mr. Öcalan's isolation, which is totally against the human rights? Also, why is there still no reaction against Turkey, do you think? Is it political?
Yes, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Yes, I think on one hand, especially the Parliament is eager to support the Kurdish people to fight for their rights. There is no doubt. There is a broad majority. But on the other hand, you have not only the Parliament, you have the Council as well, and the Council is built by the members, by the governments of the member states, and the member states often in different situations, and they have different interests than the Parliament, and then to fight human rights. That's the point. Especially they have economic interests on one hand, and on the other hand, we have still the problem of no, it's difficult to say. It's not a problem of refugees. It's a problem that the European Union didn't find until today a solution how to deal with refugees from the Middle East. And Erdogan is in the position since 2015, 2016 that he can, and he do it, to blackmail the EU. He says, if you urge me or if you table the Kurdish question too loud, and if you increase the pressure to me and to the Turkish government, then I will open the border. And then you have in different member states of the European Union problems with the population and with right-wing parties. And a lot of governments don't want to have this pressure. Especially the German, but look to France. France is similar, and some East European, Middle and East European countries have the same situation. They don't want to have these conflicts with their own citizens on refugees, and therefore it's currently not possible to do more as the European Parliament is doing currently. And from my point of view, first of all, the European Union has to find a solution on the question how to deal with refugees and asylum, and to build up a common position. Before that will happen, the European Union is in a very weak position in relation to Turkey and Erdogan.
So basically, you are saying that the Erdogan treatment against the Europe it works.
Yes.
Because yes,
Yes,
that's the reason.
Unfortunately,
that,
yes.
Yeah, about the Öcalan situation, still they are silent, so they are afraid from Erdogan.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dear Melanie, we would like to carry on with you. Another question for you. The Freedom for Öcalan campaign in UK, what role can the trade union movement play in the struggle for freedom for Öcalan? That's very important because this campaign is growing up in UK. But do you think this campaign should be worked harder to reach to the trade unions in the EU as well?
Yes, in the UK, the trade union movement is really taking on board the case of Öcalan. And we've seen real increase in grassroots action around this campaign. And for several years now, the campaign to free Öcalan has been one of the big top campaigns, even in the trade union Congress. We've seen delegates at trade union meetings all holding up pictures of Abdullah Öcalan and passing motions to call for his freedom. So we're seeing that there's a real groundswell of opinion and increasing knowledge about his case, and that's very, very heartwarming. But obviously we need to do more. We need this groundswell of action to move up through the layers of power. We need it to expand into Europe. We need to see more action in the European trade union movement, more motions being passed, more resolutions being passed, and more knowledge being gained about this case, because that's something that the Turkish authorities have been hugely successful in, that they've managed to really keep this case below the radar, I think, in Europe. Not that many people traditionally have known about it. And that's something that is changing. And that's something that the trade union movement has been very good on in educating people at branch level and so on. So yes, so the knowledge about him is definitely increasing. And we've seen this year the peace delegation that Ögmundur and I and many others were involved in. That's something that's been growing every year. 18 people were involved in this delegation this year, academics and trade unionists and so on, lawyers, and was a very active delegation. There really is a growing feeling that this is something that is important in terms of the politics of the Middle East, and a feeling that this is the way that we're going to achieve some sort of peace process.
Thank you, dear Melanie. We're going to carry on with Ögmundur. Ögmundur, you have mentioned the role of the CPT. That was really important point on your first answer. What are the conditions of Öcalan's incarceration? Isn't it unfair that the CPT is still keeping silence about Öcalan's conditions? And also, Europe Committee for the Prevention of Torture, that CPT has visited Imrali 10 times since 1999. What is the impact of these visits? Is there have been any impact of that visits?
Important that the CPT does what it has done, as you say, 9 times. But since 1999, it has been 29 times to Turkey, but only this many times to Imrali Island. I think it is, of course, important that the institutions of Europe and the world take themselves seriously. I have often quoted a human rights activist I met in Amit, Diyarbakir, some years ago, when he said that we should not worry so much about the Kurds. They would never be suppressed. But we should worry about Europe, and we should worry about the world, and save Europe from the humiliation of silence. And I think there is something to this. Now, I think when it comes to the CPT, the Council of Europe and European institutions, we should look at a landmark decision that we had at the beginning of 2020, when the Belgian Court of Cassation came to the conclusion or confirm a former decision by the Brussels Court of Cassation of Appeal that the PKK should not any longer be seen as a terrorist organization. Now, this is of immense importance, of course, because this definition of PKK as a terrorist organization is being used throughout Europe and throughout NATO countries to suppress or to prevent people from supporting the Kurdish cause. It also gives not only Turkey but to all states that adhere to this definition the right, the imagined right, to freeze money, to ban any support to the Kurdish cause if it is deemed to have connections with the PKK. So this decision by the Court of Cassation in Belgium is of immense importance. And I think we should try to make the institutional world of Europe respect this. NATO, the European Union, not even Belgium, has taken this verdict seriously, but it should be taken seriously. But to come back to the CPT, what the CPT said after its visit in May 2019, which was of importance. This was in the wake of the hunger strikes, where 3,000 prisoners in Turkish prisons took part. Leyla Güven was in the spearhead. Then there was an opening. After these joint moves, the hunger strike on the one side, which was of course of greatest importance, and then also the visit of the CPT. Then there was a short opening. The window, the doors at the Imrali prisons were opened ajar, but only for a short time. And after the Council of Europe came out with its declaration that the isolation system at Imrali needed a complete overhaul without delay, and the Turkish authorities deepened the isolation. So you ask yourself, when are these institutions who claim to be the bastions of human rights, when are they going to start to take themselves seriously? They are not doing that at all.
Dear Ögmundur, you make very important points again. Thank you so much for that comment. You talked about the PKK's situation as well. So I would like to ask to Jürgen about this case as well. Many MPs and MEPs all around Europe nowadays, they're talking about keeping Mr. Abdullah Öcalan under isolation and keeping the PKK on the forbidden organizations list is two different faces of the same problem, same coin, basically. So how would you like to evaluate these two related issues?
Yes, I agree that belongs to each other's two sides of the same coin, indeed. Because if you delete the PKK from the list of forbidden organizations, then there is no longer a reason to keep Öcalan in prison. At least then you have to release him. and therefore it's important to fight, to continue to fight for this. The Parliament demanded that several times within the last years, but currently, as I said, we have the problem from 2015-16 between the EU and the Turkish government, or Erdogan especially, concerning the blackmailing with the refugees. And now we have the Ukrainian war. Yes, you all know about the negotiations between NATO and Sweden and Finland to join the NATO. And that was a good possibility, a good, in breaks, for Erdogan to blackmail the EU and the NATO states again, and to say, I will only agree if the Swedish government and Finnish government changed their policy concerning PKK and Kurds, and that's a problem, yes. And that's really a big conflict, political conflict, and I hope that the European Parliament will continue to fight for deleting the PKK from the list of forbidden organizations. The last 2 years, we have had since around about 20 years this conference, this yearly conference, but due to the pandemic, we couldn't have these conferences during the last 2 years. This year in December, I hope we can have again this big conference on the Kurdish question in Turkey and EU. And because this is an important point to fight for this issue and to remember the politicians not to forget this issue and to continue to fight. And what my colleague said, this decision of the court, of the Belgian court, is really important, but we have to make it more known. A lot of people, a lot of governments don't know about it. I think governments, at least, yes, they have their administration and they collect a lot of information. But a lot of normal politicians in the parliaments in the other countries don't know about this decision of the Belgian court. And therefore, I think we have to focus on make this decision better known in the European Union. That could be really helpful to delete the PKK from the terror list.
Thank you, dear Jürgen. Melanie, we're going to carry on with you. There is another significant issue about Öcalan's situation. What impact does this policy of isolation have on the broader Kurdish freedom movement in Turkey and in Europe as well? And how do you gauge the level of the support that Öcalan enjoys within that community and within the diaspora as well?
Well, as Ögmundur was saying earlier, the treatment of Öcalan is really a paradigm for how the Kurds are treated more generally in Turkey. So therefore, it does have a massive impact on them. They see it as Ögmundur was saying, it's how they get treated. There's an attempt in Turkey to crush kind of Kurdish expression and Kurdish political aspiration. And their leader, their kind of self-proclaimed leader of the Kurdish freedom movement, is in prison, as we've said, in the most extreme circumstances of isolation of any political prisoner in Europe. So that does have a massive impact. But as we've also seen year in, year out, that the Kurdish people will not be crushed. They every year come back stronger. They are the ultimate fighters and strugglers for their own rights. But in terms of the diaspora of the Kurdish communities in Europe, in 2015, there was a petition, which was a very clear illustration of gauging the level of support that Öcalan has. And that petition won 10.3 million signatures. 10.3 million people across Europe called for his release. So I think we can see that he enjoys massive support across the Kurdish communities in Turkey and in the diaspora. I think there's no doubt about that.
Thank you, dear Melanie. Thanks for that. Ögmundur, we're gonna carry on with you. The latest developments about the latest statements from the KCK came out recently. The Turkish state has started to talk about talks with Öcalan. In response, the KCK Executive Council has announced that it has been pointed out that these discourses are a part of their special war policy, basically. So as Turkey approaches to the 2023 elections, what do you think is the purpose of these kind of discussions? What is the logic behind that discussions?
Well, it's very difficult hard to take Erdogan seriously. You see, there has been no contact whatsoever with Abdullah Öcalan since March last year. No contact whatsoever. Every possible convention, including Turkish law, is contravened, is broken. So we must see some action before we take these words seriously at all. And as Jürgen has just reminded us, Turkey tried to use the accession of Sweden and Finland into NATO as a bargaining point, you know, to force them to change their approach towards the Kurds. And I must say that to my great disappointment, when I read the agreement the Swedes and the Finns had made with Erdogan, I was shocked that Sweden and Finland should at all do this. But that is one point, you know. In order to take the Turkish authorities, including, of course, Erdogan, seriously, we must see some deeds. Another point I want to stress is what Jürgen mentioned about the Belgian Court of Cassation, that its verdict from 2020. It's very important that we make it known among the grassroots, and also the grassroots in politics. The grassroots in politics should become aware of the importance of this verdict and that it be taken seriously. But when it comes to this question of gauging the support Öcalan enjoys in society or among the Kurds, we of course do not have opinion polls telling us or giving us a sign. But I've been now on 5 Imrali delegations, 3 in Turkey and 2 virtual. Before that, I visited Turkey in 2014 and Diyarbakir, Amit, and I traveled a bit around. Now, everywhere I have been, meeting people with different political views, because some of us are left-wing, others are right-wing, you know, we may differ on the way we want our society to be organized in details, you know, and also in general lines. But the whole political spectrum in the Kurdish community appears, to me at least, to be in support of Abdullah Öcalan. And I attended Nevros in Diyarbakir in 2014 with hundreds and thousands of people. all hailing Abdullah Öcalan as their spokesman and leader. But the main instrument, measuring instrument I am using is what happened in the period 2013-2015, when Öcalan was at the negotiating table. He was in his cell in Imrali Island, but he was taking part in the negotiations. And what was the situation in Turkey at that time? Optimism, peace, and people saw a brighter future ahead. That was the general feeling in the country, not only amongst the Kurds, but also in Turkey in general. HDP became the third biggest party in the country. And this is how I gauge the popularity and the importance of Abdullah Öcalan at the negotiating table, not only for the Kurds, but for peace in Kurdistan. This is what the international community, if it at all cares about peace, should think about. And another thing that we must make the grassroots aware of, and this I was made aware of on my visits to Turkey, and also when I attended the People's Tribunal in Paris in 2018, March 2018, where the atrocities committed by the Turkish authorities between 2015 and beginning of 2017 were looked into. And we saw pictures of villages, of towns, which had been erased to the ground, no less dramatic than the worst we have seen from Ukraine, no less dramatic. Hundreds of thousands of people, fugitives on the move in their own country. But the world was silent, absolutely silent. So this is our mission as well, to make Europe and the world aware of what has been happening in Turkey in these years and what is happening now. Every single day as we are speaking now, there are air attacks in northern Syria, east of the border with Iraq in South Kurdistan. There are attacks every day, drones. There are accusations of chemical weapons being used, and the institution in The Hague, which should investigate, has been asked. So, no reply. Nothing. So again here, the world is silent. So our task, of course, is to do what the human activists I referred to in Diyarbakir said those years back. Don't worry about us. Worry about Europe. Save it from its humiliation of life. This should be our task. And this is what we are trying to do. And I ask Melanie, what is your evaluation if you look at the Imrali delegations from, compare what is happening now? Wouldn't you say that the interest is rising?
Dear Ögmundur, thank you very much. We will get back to you and Melanie to get your latest, lastly, the messages and wrap-ups as well. But before that, we have only one question left for Jürgen. Dear Jürgen, that's a very important one that we would like to hear your evaluation. What role can European institutions play in the struggle to free Öcalan? And do you think European institutions and commissions have a willingness to free Öcalan and to play his role in bringing peace to the region?
Yes, in general, there is a possibility, but as I already said, it depends on on the power of the parliament, and we have to increase the power of the parliament in this point. The parliament is a place or the institution which is supporting the Kurdish question most, more than the Commission and more than the Council. That's a problem. But structurally, the Commission depends more on the Council than on the Parliament. That's a problem, and therefore we have it's a question of the internal balances between the three main institutions of the European Union: Parliament, Commission, and Council, and we have an imbalance that gives more power to the Council than to the Parliament, and that's a problem. As I already said, there are some member state governments, they are not willing to support the Kurds or to fight with the Turkish government, and that's a point. And therefore, what I already said, it is important that we can continue to have these conferences together with the EUTCC, these yearly conferences, because that's really a place to make all these issues aware. Ono spoke about that it is important to make this aware. And I think then we have a possibility, but not in short terms, I think only in longer terms. We have had a good situation in 2013-14 when the peace process was on a peak. A broad majority cross over the political families, argued for deleting the PKK from the terror list. But when the situation changed in 2015-16, it became more difficult to follow this line, and I think we have to work really hard on this to come back to this line we had in 2013 and 14 to pick up this situation and to reorganize it. But I think the Parliament, the European Parliament, is a main place to do this, and if the Parliament will pick this up and will become stronger, and when the situation of the pandemic is really changing and we can continue our conferences, then I think there is a change, there's a real chance to delete the PKK from the list, and I think that's a precondition. After the PKK is deleted, as I already said, from the list, you can't keep Ocalan any longer in prison, because there is no reason. He is no longer, in that case, the former chief of a forbidden organization.
Thank you, Jürgen. And lastly, and very shortly, very briefly, what is your message? What would you like to say? Anything that I didn't ask that you would like to talk about? You have a minute left, so please.
Yeah, okay. I think we have to continue to explain what happens in Turkey, what happens in the Kurdish regions, and we have to fight this blackmailing Erdogan is doing. I think that's really very important. I saw during the last years the newspapers, the media are more aware about what's going on in Turkey, and we have to increase this process. We have to make more and more aware, and I see some possibilities and some changes. I'm not pessimistic. I'm a little bit optimistic. Yes.
Thank you, Jürgen. Dear Melanie, lastly, very shortly, very briefly, anything else that you would like to add on? Anything that I didn't ask? What is your message? Very shortly, please.
Yes, I mean, I agree with the comments that have just been made, that it's so important to spread the message about what's happening in Turkey. It's not widely enough known. We need to counteract this policy of silence that the Turkish authorities have managed to impose. Öcalan, he's 73 years old now. He remains this kind of quite remarkable and singular human presence at the center of an industrial scale military prison complex that was created specifically for him. It's an absolute outrage and blight on Europe that this situation has continued for 23 years. The end of apartheid in South Africa showed us the importance of having legitimate representatives on both sides of any attempts to bring about a resolution and to bring about peace. So we really need Öcalan to be released now so that he can take up his rightful role in a process for peace.
Thank you, Melanie. Dear Ögmundur, we would like to finish with you. What is your message? Anything that you would like to add on very shortly, please? We have only 1 minute left for you. Thank you.
Yes. Well, I just say things don't change. Things can be changed. It always needs doers. And we should all become doers. And I say, don't give up.
Dear Ögmundur, thank you very much. Ögmundur Jónasson, thank you. Melanie, Gingell, and Jürgen Klute. Today we have been in the European Agenda program. On European Agenda program, we had today former European Parliamentarian and European Parliament Director of the Friends of the Kurds group, Jürgen Klute, and we had Melanie, Gingell, human rights lawyer, a member of the Steering Committee of the Peace in Kurdistan campaign, as well as former Minister of the Justice and Interior of Iceland, former member of the Icelandic Parliament and member of the International Peace Delegation, Ögmundur Jónasson, have been with us. Thanks for joining us, and we would like to see you on the next European Agenda program.